Did you have all the scriptures figured out when you first got saved? No. You were bankrupt. You just came to God and said, God, if you want me, you can have me. But I can't change. And God freely forgave you. So, we're in a series called Jesus in the Center. James preached the first message, I did the second, and then James did last week. And so this week, Jesus in the center of your thoughts. Can you imagine if Jesus was in the center of your thoughts? But I'm going to take it a different way than you might think. And that is, I already know who is in the center of our thoughts and needs to be replaced. We are. We think way too much about ourselves. We think way too much about what other people think of us. We think sometimes that we are better than others. We think sometimes we are worse than others. Many of us have a tendency when we come to church to think, I shouldn't even be worshiping with the rest of these holy people because of the thoughts that I had this week or the failure that I had this week. And we think about ourselves. And so I'm going to be talking about that, all right? So Luke chapter 7, verse 36 says, then one of the Pharisees asked him to eat with him. And he went to the Pharisee's house and sat down to eat. And behold, a woman in the city who was a sinner. Now, this woman comes in a moment, we'll see, and anoints his feet, and she stands behind him. And she uses her tears and fragrant oil. There was another woman who anointed his feet and his head. Matthew 26, Mark 14, and John 12. That was Mary, the sister of Martha and the sister of Lazarus. These are not the same. They don't happen the same chronologically, and they're not the same. But this is in Simon's house, so some people who don't really know the Bible think it's the same. Simon was a very common name. By the way, there were two Simon disciples. Two out of 12 named Simon. And there were also two, I don't know whether to break this to you or not. I had to break it to my son, James. We think there were two named James, but James is not a Hebrew name. They were actually named Jacob. So King James, when he translated the Bible, 1611, he wanted his name in the Bible, so he changed the name Jacob to James in the New Testament. I'm sorry, okay? I didn't know that when we named you. I thought we were giving you a biblical name. But Jacob, the son, the brother, Jacob was the brother of John, and Jacob, the brother of Jesus. But there were Simon the Zealot and Simon Peter. Okay, so Simon was a very well-known name. This is Simon the Pharisee, and the other, where Mary anointed the feet, was Simon the leper. And he had been healed by Jesus, but he was still called the leper, but he was able to have people in his home and own a home then, okay? All right, so I just want you to know this is a different woman than Mary, the sister of Lazarus. And it says she was a sinner. Now, I want to give you the definition from the Strong's lexicon. Lexicon simply means dictionary. Lexi means words, con means definition. So it's just the definition of words. That's all a lexicon is, all right? But this is what the Strong Enhanced Lexicon says about this Greek word, all right? I want to put it on the sin. This is a person devoted to sin. A sinner. Not free from sin. Still in bondage to sin. Now watch this. Preeminently sinful. Now you may not be familiar with the word eminent, but eminent means first. And pre means before. So before, God is preeminent. So what this means is that among sinful people, she was actually before the first sinful person. Before the first, whoever was the best sinful person, she was actually better, okay? That's what this means. By the way, this is the person I relate to in the story. Especially wicked. Specifically a men stained, and this is a moral term, with certain definite vices or crimes. So this is where we get that most theologians believe she was a prostitute. We don't know for sure, but it seems like because of the way she's spoken about that she was a prostitute, okay? All right, so go back to verse 37. And behold, a woman in the city who was a sinner, when she knew that Jesus sat at the table in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster flask of fragrant oil and stood at his feet behind him because of her shame, weeping. And she began to wash his feet with her tears and wiped them with the hair of her head. And she kissed his feet and anointed them with the fragrant oil. Now, when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he spoke to himself. Now, let me just stop for a moment. He spoke to himself. Another way of saying that is he thought. You speak to yourself all the time, and you're not crazy, okay? Some of you are, but most of you aren't crazy. We speak to ourselves. Think about how many times you go over stuff in your mind. So this is just thinking. He spoke, but he didn't say it out loud. It's very important to the story. He spoke to himself, saying, I love this man, watch, if he were a prophet. I just like if he were a prophet, because you're going to find out in a minute that he was a prophet. He was the prophet. If he were a prophet, he would know who and what manner of woman this is. In other words, she's probably a prostitute who's touching him, for she is a sinner. And Jesus, oh, I love this word, answered. Nobody asked him anything. Simon just had a thought, and Jesus